Hello everyone, welcome to Wargaming Parrot. I am David and today's video is going to be the second in my series of behaviour solutions videos. These videos are where people submit a short clip and a bit of a blurb about what's going on or the problems they're facing with their parrots, and then I look at that with Sophie sometimes and then we analyse it and come up with some solutions to help you. Now I thought I'd do these videos because not everyone can afford bird consultations, not everyone has access to sort of parrot education that is available in different parts of the world, so I thought it would be very useful so you can see what other people are facing. Maybe they'll be similar to your problems. Those people who are submitting the material to me can get some dedicated one-on-one help, and I benefit because obviously I make a fun video that you can all enjoy. Now remember, me and Sophie do run a parrot behaviour consultation business called Best Behaved Birds. So if you do have any serious problems and you need some advice and some help, you can book a consultation with us. I will leave a link in the description as always, so you can always check out our website and find out what we're all about. But in the meantime, let's get started. My first submission is for a little lovebird called Sushi, and Sushi's been doing really well. He's a rescue, he's not biting anymore, he's trusting his owner, he's very happy, but there are some problems with stepping up and encouraging him to get out of the cage. The owner writes, he knows how to target, but he feels only doing it when he's in the mood. It's not helping with stepping up. And if you use a stick instead of using like a hand, he gets very fearful, which is something we normally suggest, so that's something we can look into. Snacks are reserved for foraging and target training only, and there's lots of progress made, so let's watch the clip and then we'll offer some solutions.
Sushi. Step up. Step up. Step up.
So with regards to Sushi, firstly I want to say it's awesome that you rescued. It's always good to rescue. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with getting parrots from a breeder, but if you can rescue, it's always better. And the first sort of point I picked up upon is that you said he doesn't always feel motivated to train, and that can be due to the fundamental lack of treat motivation. So reserving those important treats, doing a treat hierarchy test as well to find out what treats are most motivating for Sushi to perform behaviours can be so vital. And finally, on that topic as well, it's well worth doing a training session before breakfast. It's something we suggest to clients, it's something we suggest in the videos, and it increases the motivation because it's a bit of hunger motivation. If you just do the training session maybe 5 minutes before breakfast, and they're going to be a lot more motivated, a lot more keen because they're hungry, and then obviously after the training session's done, you just give them breakfast as normal. So with regards to the step up training itself, there's a few pointers I can offer. The first is, I noticed from the video you're kind of putting your finger up to Sushi, and Sushi's just like tolerating it. It's either Sushi's either learned to target or tolerate your finger. So when you do ask Sushi to step up, Sushi's a bit confused about what you're asking. Doesn't really understand what you want them to do, so it may be important to sort of differentiate targeting or sort of contact training with Sushi from step up training. In light of this, I would suggest bringing your hand up from below Sushi and keeping it consistent. No sort of beak tapping. Every people's got a strong opinion. No sort of beak tapping, just keeping it up, bringing it up from below and doing it in the same way every single time and leaving it there. It's also very important that you raise it up a little bit as well, so Sushi actually steps up. Some birds will step down, but it's much easier to step up as well. So we'll keep perches out of the equation here as well for this, because you said that Sushi's a bit scared of them. Continue with your hand and doing it consistently, but also don't forget that stepping up is consent based and it's also a trick. That means it needs regular reinforcement. It's well worth having reinforcement in your other hand. So you present your hand, you have, I can't actually show it on my mobile in my other hand, let's give it to Sophie. You have your hand, you have your treat behind your hand, and you get Sushi to step up by almost luring him onto the hand and then pairing it with a cue. And there's nothing wrong with this because it's consent based, because it's a trick. Sushi needs to learn that stepping up gets a nice reward, and by keeping it nice and consistent, giving the cue, then giving the praise afterwards in a consistent way, you can start building upon this and helping Sushi understand what you actually want Sushi to do. The final point I wanted to make was with regards to target training. And with your target training, I know you said he's not always receptive, but that may improve with treat motivation and confidence. You can use that target training to lure him onto the hand. You can also use it to improve confidence in and around the cage. If Sushi's a bit nervous about leaving the cage, you can open the hatch and have Sushi target around the outside of the cage. This is kind of like incremental steps improving his confidence. So he's going to come out of the cage, but he doesn't leave that safe area. He's still on the cage, it's somewhere safe, and doesn't need to go anywhere, and you can just target, reinforce and make it a really positive place to be. And hopefully these tips will help with your step up training and Sushi's confidence going forward. This submission is from Kate, and she has a little cockatiel called Bertie. Now Bertie is 7 months old and he's being a little bit territorial recently. He's been bickering a lot with his sister Berber, which I think is a really cool name. You're doing lots right already, you know, getting the sleep right and lots of things that you're trying, which I'll talk about a little bit later in solutions. However, he's very noisy, you live in an apartment, he's screaming lots and being territorial. So you want to get some solutions to help with that. And we'll watch the clip and we'll see what we can come up with. With regards to Bertie, now you're doing so many things right already, trying to redirect the behaviour, managing sleep, managing hormones, working through all the problems. These are the sort of things that will help. It may be worth looking again at diet, just in case there's any sort of pellets there, anything high sugar, high fat that may be encouraging the hormonal behaviour, maybe potentially adding in chamomile, other supplements if you don't already, to help with the hormones and maybe to try and level them out. It can also help with territorial behaviour as well, because chamomile is calming and has a nice impact there. Now sadly, parrots, especially cockatiels, I'm not sure why especially cockatiels, but all parrots do it, they will gravitate to high areas they can look out from, that may be considered naughty, because obviously if they go to that high area and we keep removing them, that's attention, and if we end up reinforcing that as well, they're almost training us that if they go up there, they're going to get a reinforcement and lots of attention from us. So it's something to be very aware of. And sometimes going up to high areas isn't necessarily a problem. It depends if they're being destructive or aggressive, all sorts of things like that. So you need to kind of balance it out a little bit and see what's going on there. I'd also like to add that squabbling between parrots on high areas is pretty common. Both chip and fish run along the curtain pole, and they do squabble occasionally when one wants to go into one end, the other wants to go on the other end. It's not abnormal, it's just something to keep an eye on, and it will happen from time to time. Depends, again, if it leads to excessive screaming and other behaviours, and that's when you kind of step in. Now, when you're stepping in and you don't want to be removing them from that high area, which could be self-reinforcing, it's worth looking at stationing training. Now, stationing training is something we're doing with the boys. It works very well with the conures when they're being a bit cheeky, because they'll come anywhere for a treat. But setting up a station in the room away from, say, for example, the top of the door or anywhere naughty, you consider naughty, and you can train them to station to that place. So say, for example, they go, for our example, the boys go up the top of the curtain pole. We don't want them to be there because they're chewing it up. We can train them to station to the chair. So we pair it with a command, a cue, command. Some people say command, Sophie thinks it's a bit of an aggressive word, so we'll say cue. Pair it with a cue and have them fly to it, reward them, and then when they're up there, you can just give them the command station. They will fly to that area, be at the back of the chair, wherever you set up, and then you don't have to fetch them, and they will go there and they will know that they fly to the area, they get a nice reward. And this works very well for lots of parrots. It can be hit and miss with some if they're particularly stubborn and that high area is more reinforcing. So it really does depend on the amount of work you put into the stationing training, and it can be very, very effective. With regards to the noise that Bertie makes, we understand because we live in a very large apartment, but it's still part of an apartment block, and it can be disruptive. So one of the easiest ways to prevent noise is by tiring your parrots out. This means lots and lots of flying, which the stationing can help with in the previous point. Lots of activity, lots of fun things when they're out, just to keep them active, because generally a tired and sort of content bird is going to be a less noisy bird, and it also helps burn off any energy they may have got from any treat foods or anything like that. So as much exercise as possible is very helpful. Now, as I mentioned before, you have to be very careful that Bertie doesn't start training you. It's very easily done. In some ways, when we first got the boys, they almost did it to us with the curtain pole and us fetching them down because they were being naughty. So don't let him train you, and be very conscious of that. Now, the final tip I have time for is conditioned calm. Now, conditioned calm is something I've mentioned in videos, and it's a very effective technique at trying to get parrots to calm down and relax. And the way you implement it in brief is before bedtime, say about 20 minutes, you start playing some sort of sound. We normally use thunderstorm noises or rainforest noises. Don't use bird noises because that's very exciting. It can be overstimulating. It can be classical music, whatever you want. It can even be spa music, because that's relaxing, whatever you fancy. And you play this for that 20 minutes before bedtime. And then turn it off at bedtime, and you do it repeatedly over the course of a couple of weeks. your parrots will start to pair that noise with settling down time and relaxing time. And then if they're noisy during the day, you can then use this technique to help to get them to calm down. Now, I wouldn't say it's effective every single time. For example, if we have magpies sat on the guttering, it doesn't work. However, if there's no outside scares or stimulus, it works very well. And I actually used it before I started filming to get the boys to relax, and they're now relaxing and preening while the conures are causing chaos in the room. So we have a submission for 2 cockatiels named Pluto and Flint, and these have been rehomed recently and they come from separate homes, so the owner's taken them on, and they both had previous issues with females in the previous homes getting pecked and bullied, which actually happens a lot more than one would expect. And there's a nice clip of Flint, and just talking about hormones and hormonal behaviour, and there's some issues about maybe Flint trying to mate with Pluto, even though they're 2 guys, and it's certainly something we can look into. So hormonal behaviour is always something interesting to look into. It causes lots of problems. It's very important to not label absolutely everything as hormonal, because not everything is caused by hormonal behaviour. But we'll look at a clip and then we will talk about some solutions. Now for Flint and Pluto, and focusing more on Flint, I guess, it's really awesome you adopted them, and it's just such a nice thing to see. And as I mentioned just before your clip, it's perfectly normal that females will bully males, and it just happens so often, and it's just sad to see really, because often these guys are very sensitive, lovely birds, and they get plucked and picked on and need to be separated. So it's just a really good thing you've done there. So regarding your video, the first thing I want to say, it's not actually a cause for concern. What you're seeing in that video that you sent me is perfectly normal chatting and singing from cockatiels. They do it very often, and it's often paired quite cutely with them raising their foot, maybe balling it up, scrunching it up. It's nothing to worry about. If it's done constantly, it can be a sign of hormonal behaviour, but a little bit of chatting, a little bit of singing is generally what you'll see from most male cockatiels when they're a little bit more relaxed, when they're a little bit more settled, and when they want to display for either you or just generally get out their natural behaviours. So you mentioned in your initial email that he likes to get on top of Pluto, and that would definitely be a sign of hormonal behaviour, and there's some things you can put in place for hormone management. So ensuring that both Pluto and Flint are getting 12 hours of sleep minimum every day will help with hormones. Lack of sleep is one of the biggest causes of hormonal behaviour in parrots, because when they're getting less sleep, it stimulates the summer breeding cycle and it just triggers the hormones. If you like, you can increase the sleep to 14 hours, which can be quite difficult to do with our different lifestyles. But if you do increase to 14 hours and you increase this for, say, a period of a week, it can help to snap parrots out of the hormonal cycle and get them on. Also ensuring that Pluto and Flint's diet is as healthy and diverse as possible. This means lots of veggies, sprouted seeds, nothing wrong with some seeds, just not as a predominant part of the diet. You can have herbs and all sorts of other things. You can also supplement the diet with flowers such as chamomile, mint, hibiscus. These are all good at helping with hormones. There's loads of like pre-made blends you can buy. Polly's Natural Parrot Boutique, not sponsored by the way, just something we like, have some lovely sort of hormone management blends which are good. I'll try and leave a link in the description because I think some of the rest of you will benefit from these teas as well. We'd also suggest for Flint and Pluto lots of fun training activities. So generally we recommend 2 to 3 training sessions a day. It doesn't have to be long ones, maybe 2 to 5 minutes, but having structured training sessions of the day will help use up some energy, help burn off some of the stuff that's going on. Just like in the previous point with territorial behaviour and screaming, just get lots of energy and get some of those hormonal behaviour going away, because again, birds that tend to get lots of natural behaviour expressed tend to be a little bit less hormonal. So if you can get those training sessions going, it'll be very helpful. And finally, making sure that the cage doesn't have any potential nesting sites or dark corners. If you notice both Flint or Pluto going to dark corners constantly, barking, sort of fluffing up, rocking, that sort of thing, is something you want to discourage, because that will be a potential nesting site. So it's worth observing both of them and looking at how they behave in the cage and also outside, because we had a little phase where Chip liked one of the DVD stands and he kept going in there, so eventually we just got rid of it entirely to eliminate it as a potential hormonal trigger. My last submission for this particular video is for a severe macaw called Cookie. It's a little bit more of a complex one, so I'm going to try and give it as much time as I can, but there's lots to talk about. So Cookie's adopted again. Her older owners meant well, but didn't really know very well about behaviour. Encouraged hormonal behaviour, thinking it was cute. She's just very hormonal, very bitey, very aggressive, and there's lots of different elements going on here. Now, I know that Cookie's owner has tried lots of things, such as increasing sleep. She's on a very healthy diet, consistency is good, all sorts of things, but there's an awful lot involved here, and there's all sorts of things going on. So I'm going to show you a couple of clips of Cookie, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what we think may start to help with this situation, because it is a very complex one.
Cooksters, you want to do some? Good girl. I would like to keep my fingers.
So now for Cookie, it's really good that you adopted Cookie and you're looking after her and you're trying to do your best for her. It's rewarding, and just don't give up. You know, it's worth the effort if you just keep trying, because me and Sophie believe that no parrot is irredeemable. They are incredibly intelligent. It just sometimes takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. Now, we've already sort of had an email exchange about Cookie's situation, and we talked a little bit about some of the things you're doing. Lots of things you are doing right, like increasing sleep, you know, training, good diet, etc, etc. So I don't want to go over them again in this video, but there are some tips to improve, and I know there's an awful lot going on here, so I'm going to try and give as many tips as I can. Now, some of the advice you've had in the past has made me a little bit sad, and I'm quite sure it made you sad as well. There's no reason to put a parrot down because they're hormonal or even bitey, and I strongly disagree with whoever suggested that. It's just someone taking an easy way out. Similarly with having her neutered, or whatever expression they used, that's not going to solve anything either. It's just unpleasant, it's difficult, and it's risky. It's just not worth it. So Pickles is demanding to go on my head because she was nipping at my toes, so excuse me for the company. So I'll just quickly look at my notes. I'll give you 1 second. So one place I would like to start, as with any sort of training difficult situation, and I've mentioned this before in this video, is treat motivation. If Cookie's not motivated enough for her treats because they're in a diet, or you haven't done a treat hierarchy, then it could make training a lot more difficult. So making sure the portions are small and making sure that treat motivation is there, it's going to be very important. Now, I know there's a risk with giving smaller bits because Cookie may bite, but I'm going to cover that in a little later point. So you mentioned that Cookie's getting plenty of sleep, and that's really, really good, because when you're dealing with hormones, a lack of sleep is one of the primary triggers of it. So getting lots of sleep is great. However, we discussed a little bit about the situation and the way she's getting that sleep, and I feel that having a very enclosed space for Cookie when she's sleeping is potentially exacerbating the problem rather than making it better. So if you can find a way to get her that quality sleep, but without being in a small enclosed space, it may help lots with maybe starting to calm down this hormonal behaviour. As I mentioned on cage setup as well, it may be worth providing a couple more high up perches in Cookie's cage, because in one of the videos you sent for targeting, I noticed she took her treat, she took it onto a food bowl, which is about on the top third, which is good, but she may not feel safe eating it. I noticed this with Olive. I've also noticed this from a lorikeet, oddly, in a long time in the past, where in the enclosure, lorikeet would take a berry from me and then fly it far, far away from me and other people, because he was very nervous about being with them. So if you can provide some more options for Cookie to feel safe, you may notice a bit of an improvement. And if you could try and train Cookie on one of these options, it'd be useful. Similarly, when you're training Cookie outside the cage, providing a perch directly attached to the cage may make your life a little bit easier and give you a bit of a safety net, especially if you can keep on reinforcing it and making that perch on the cage the training perch to work on stuff with. So you mentioned that Cookie's very reactive to males. So if your son or husband comes into the room, she'll get very aggressive and her behaviour will flip. Now, this could be for two reasons. One is that the male is hormonally triggering for her due to past experience, so she wants to get at them because she's frustrated. More likely, she may have had a difficult experience with a male and she's scared and it makes her agitated. And it's worth observing what impact this has on her between the male and female human dynamic with her, and just observing it, maybe even trying to build some tolerance in her to that. Say, for example, getting your son to step into the room and then waiting for some calm behaviour, then rewarding her. Maybe get him to go a little bit closer And then again, rewarding for calm behaviour. You can also do it through negative reinforcement by taking your son out of the picture. But again, this will take quite a lot, long while to explain. So if you do need more explanation on that, just email me and I'll give you a sort of a write-up on what it means. So you mentioned that you're very worried about Cookie biting, and that's understandable because macaw beaks hurt. So I would recommend stepping back your training with Cookie right back to the basics, and this is for yours and her safety. So that means targeting through the bars, which I think you already mentioned you're doing, and just rewarding her for even one. So keep your training sessions short, maybe 1 or 2 reps if you can manage it. Try and keep the portion sizes small. And also, if you're, because you mentioned obviously you give big portions for the rewards because you're worried about getting bitten. If you're doing it for the bars and you're holding extreme distance, Cookie's only going to be able to take that treat with extreme gentleness, and you'll be able to work out how far you should hold it away to encourage this. And by adding this safety margin, you can not worry about being bitten. Cookie's in a safe space, so she may be more receptive, and you can keep working at it and keep trying to end those sessions on a positive, so it links in her that she's in a safe space, you're somewhere safe, and it's going to lead to positive rewards if she does what you want her to do. Again, another mention is trying to do it before breakfast, where her motivation may be higher, will be very useful. Definitely a training session before breakfast, maybe 1 in the afternoon if possible, and then 1 in the evening, and try and keep it routine and structured so she knows what to expect. We always say that having a loose routine is very useful for parrots and settling in, but having some flexibility in that is useful because you don't want your parrot to be like scared by any change. But generally, like with humans, they like some routine. So especially with nervous birds, starting there is very helpful. Sometimes with rescues, trying to launch them into a completely different way of doing things, it's very chaotic and sporadic, can cause issues because it's just more chaos on chaos. It may also be worth working on soft targeting. Now, I mentioned in the previous point about holding the treat as far as you can so she can only take it gently. With soft targeting, you're doing the same with a targeting stick. So you're holding that targeting stick, say for example, it's Pickles, you can just see her, she thinks I've got a treat, but you see how gently she takes that from my fingers there. I have to get Sophie to go and get her a treat now because that's really mean of me. But she takes that, I held my fingers from extreme distance, she's reaching, she can't possibly get any bite force there. What you want to do is offer treats in that way, which I'll demonstrate now. And I bring it closer because obviously it may be too far initially. You want to do that with your targeting stick. So you do it extreme distance and you bring it closer and closer until she can just barely touch it. And then you praise her, say for example you say good in a nice neutral tone, and reward her. The purpose of this is you're teaching Cookie that if she's gentle and she touches softly, she gets a reward. If she bites, if she does bite, there's nothing, and then you resume the behaviour and the training again. You want to only reward and encourage the softest of bites, and this does work if you persevere with it. Now, in one of the videos you sent me, the one I've actually used for this video, you saw that Cookie was stereotyping. Now, that isn't necessarily a behaviour, a hormonal behaviour, it's more of a stress behaviour. That's repeating the same action over and over again, as you can see with Cookie, like swaying. It's important that you start maybe filming the interactions, like you sent me clips, maybe film your interactions with Cookie and see where her borderlines are, see what is causing the triggers. You probably know a lot of them already, but there may be some subtle ones you aren't already aware of, and it's such an important thing to do. Now, I've tried to dedicate a bit more time to Cookie because I know how difficult your situation is and I wanted to help as much as I could. However, there's just so much I could cover and there's just not enough time in this video. People's one's down, there we go, and I just can't cover it all, I'm very sorry. Hopefully these tips will get you started, and maybe some of the tips for the other people in the feature in this video will help you as well. My emails are open. I can't promise I'll reply very quickly if you get an awful lot, but I will reply and try and help, and hopefully yours and Cookie's situation will improve. So guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Scampy's clearly very stimulated and excited by what he's just seen. I hope I help you guys who submitted out, and that some of these solutions will help with your problems. I hope Sophie's gesturing in the background to encourage him to dance. I hope those of you who are watching maybe found some solutions to the problems you're facing. Remember, I will be doing this as a series, so if you ever have any problems, you can submit during future submission windows, and I'll always post on my community to let you guys know. But in the meantime, take care from me and a very excited Scampy. Have a really awesome day and see you later.